thank you for joining us for the webinar on Gamified Onboarding. It's in partnership with KNOLSKAPE. I am Ritu from People Matters, and before telling you about today's agenda, let me give you a brief about today's webinar topic. Most companies understand the importance of having a strong onboarding process. However, many companies follow traditional onboarding practices, which involve reading company policies and training manuals, apart from watching endless videos on company cultures and ethics. In a workforce dominated by millennials who expect work to be fun and interesting, gamified onboarding can help in creating a wow experience. To new hires, this webinar will help us to understand how to create gamified onboarding programs that leverage best practices, supports the company's strategy, and connects people to their new roles. We will discuss today how gamification can make the onboarding process engaging and fun, how new hires can connect with current employees and drive positive change in the organization, creating a wow experience for new hires during onboarding. We have the privilege of having with us Raksha Shenoy. Raksha Shenoy is a learning consultant with KNOLSKAPE, involved in the design and delivery of experiential learning programs. She is a gold medalist in law and hold master's degree in business administration. Raksha has worked across human resources and learning development space, from performance management to behavioral program delivery and assessment. Her experience involves managing the design, development, implementation, and evaluation of employee development programs. A partner for today's webinar who helps us to make this initiative absolutely possible is KNOLSKAPE. KNOLSKAPE is an award-winning, impressive gamification and simulation software company focusing on talent transformation. KNOLSKAPE is celebrating its 7th anniversary this year. We have saved time for you to ask your questions at the end of the webinar. For those watching the live session, you can submit your questions anytime during the presentation to the Q&A section. We will try to respond as many questions as time allows. We have a full exciting agenda for today's webinar. So without any further delay, I'm going to hand over the microphone to Raksha. Over to you, Raksha.
Good morning all. Thank you, Ritu, for the introduction, my introduction, and the KNOLSKAPE introduction. So once again, good morning to all the participants. Thank you for being here on time. And I'm extremely excited to welcome you to this webinar on gamified onboarding. So as Ritu mentioned, onboarding happens in all the organizations, and the best way to attract talent and retain them and engage them in the long run is having an excellent onboarding process. So how can we do this? Is gamified onboarding the answer to this? So this webinar is going to be on this line, on how can we make the onboarding process exciting for the participants, for the new hires, and how can we build a long-term relationship with the candidates and new hires. So as Ritu mentioned, I am a learning consultant at KNOLSKAPE. I am involved in the facilitation of these gamified onboarding programs. But I also have someone very close to the design of gamified onboarding process. And you can see his name on the screen. He is Mahesh, product manager at KNOLSKAPE, who is very closely working on designing a gamified version of onboarding for organizations. So I would also like to invite him as a facilitator for this program and share his experience and thoughts on how he has been building and what gamified onboarding means to all of us. As I say that, I would also request all of you to keep this session interactive. You can share your thoughts on the chat window. You can ask questions, and we will be more than happy to answer this in the next 1 hour. So I would invite Mahesh at this point. Over to you, Mahesh, and let's hear it from him on gamified onboarding.
Thank you very much, Raksha. I hope I'm audible to everyone. This is Mahesh here. So just to, before we get started, I thought I'll just share my screen. I just created like a small leaderboard for all of you who joined the webinar on time. So I'm just going to share my screen here. So here's how we're going to make it interactive, right? So you can see on my screen, you can see the names of all of you there. I think most of you have been captured. Unfortunately, WebEx does not give us an export feature of all the names, so we've actually typed down all the names here with the points that you've got. So you've got, all of you have got 10 points, and this is not currency, okay? This is just virtual points that has been awarded to all of you for being on time for the webinar. So let's get started off. So as I progress in the the small deck that we prepared, I'll be asking a lot of questions, right? And the more participation that we get from all of you, the more points that you'll get, and we will see who wins this sort of small leaderboard at the end of the hour itself. Okay, let's get started off. So let me share back the deck again. So let's first go through the agenda slide for the day. So it's going to be first addressing these challenges, right? First identifying what these challenges are in onboarding, and then seeing how to engage the next-gen workforce, right? Increasingly, folks are well-versed with smartphones and tablets. They've got hours and hours of gaming on these tablets and mobile phones. So how do we leverage this particular workforce? Okay, so that's going to be the second part, and then we look at some gamified onboarding examples. What are some things that we can do? Some features of that as well, and then we'll have a Q&A towards the end of the hour as well. Okay, so whenever you have a question, anyone who asks a question or who also has this this knack for participating will get those points that I mentioned. So do keep your mics on. And then we'll be able to answer that. If in case you're not able to connect via audio, the chat window is always open as well. So we'll be addressing those challenges in the chat window. Okay. Let's move on, right? So what are organizations currently doing? Now let me pose this question back at you, right? Let me ask, what are some of the processes that are currently ongoing in your organization? So I'm going to open it up to everyone here. Can somebody respond to this? What are let's say in your company, what is it that you do currently? Okay, there are 160 of us here. Anyone wants to voice their opinion on what is currently being done? Maybe not from the PPT itself, maybe something different. So Akanksha has said PPT, so that means I think she's referring to PPT decks that is probably the ones that are currently being used in her organization. Any other thoughts on this? Any other different types of organization, in terms of the gamified onboarding? Has an organization already adopted this? An onboarding module, okay, so a PPT on an onboarding module, great. Okay, I think PPT seems to be a fairly common use case for the organizations here. Okay, Saurabh says gamified e-learning induction program covering company and department overview, and the theme is mountain climbing. Great that you've touched on this, Saurabh. You will get the points as well for that, Saurabh and Akanksha. Thank you for that. Okay. WBT, web-based trainings. Okay, that's Natasha telling us that we use web-based trainings to do this. We'll be touching on all these, the flavor of all of these, right? That's great. Okay. So onboarding module, so you have videos, you have facilitator-led presentations, and then you have an e-learning as well. Wow, that's quite a lot of activity that goes on. Great. Anything else? Okay, interaction with the BU head. That's an interesting point there. So Shravya says, the new joinees actually interact with the BU heads, when they get onboarded into the organization that she belongs to. That's an interesting aspect as well, and it covers one major, characteristic that a lot of the younger folks today are expecting, which is empowerment. So whenever a BU head takes time off in order to interact with these folks, they are looking at not just the younger folks, but also the lateral folks as well. They're hiring from other organizations who are experienced. They do value that effort that the BU head has put up. So that's a very important point there. Thank you for that. And Arvind says, from offer acceptance to joining, every person gets to play a game which keeps them engaged. And we've experienced a 14% decline in Renegade, which means 14% decline in people, I think, leaving the firm. I think, so there you go. And Arvind has given us a stat. I don't even need to get to the numbers, which is part of my next slide. So, so that's great there. Okay, for communication with geo customers, so there is geography-based onboarding programs as well. That's what Abhishek has mentioned. Okay. Okay then, so let's move on, right? So let's move on to the next point here, and to also kind of cover up whatever you've mentioned, right? There was a survey which was done with over 350 global HR leaders, right? So there you go. Akanksha also mentioned that her company is a startup, and the CEO actually personally invites the new joinees on board. That's a great way to show empowerment and to show that there's a lot of value that goes into the onboarding process itself, right? So that's great to know, Akanksha. And also, there's weekly meetings as well with the new joinees to see how the process is going. That's brilliant. But in the cases of a larger organization, time may be a constraint, Akanksha. So let's look at how we can actually bring down that empowerment in the onboarding process, and then see how games also help in that process as well. Okay, so coming back to the survey, right, on the slide deck, we've seen that a lot of companies are doing it in different ways, and this survey actually tells us that a staggering 36.8% of people who were interviewed, 350 HR leaders who were interviewed, say that, the process is very informal, right? Now, there are other research studies to say that, if the process is not very, formal, and if the BU heads are not involved, if the HR processes are not in place, people do not feel valued, and the empowerment angle comes in as well. So that's an important point to mark here. And then you see the other numbers as well. Formal, conducted by the internal HR team, so that's 34.8%. That is great to see. But then also there are other e-learning resources that are assigned to them, right? And then forgotten, right? So that is what we say, which comes under the red and the green, which is about 16.5%, right? So in the case of the 36.8 and then the 14 and the 2.5%, there you see, close to half the people, half of the organizations which do the onboarding and who have been surveyed as well, do not see this as a major step in a career change for the people, or they may be able to see it, but they're not able to allocate enough time for it, right? So how do we address all of this? And you see 12%, staggering 12% of people say there's no process at all, right? And so that is a major pain point that we have to address. And you can see the other numbers here that's written on the left side. Half of the newly hired executives quit or are fired within the first 3 years, and almost as many who change jobs so I think we were looking at the numbers, right? So now let's move on to the business challenges, right? So very quickly, right? We won't spend a lot of time on this one. So connecting geographies, like I said, we need an onboarding program, because obviously a lot of research has told us the world has gone flat. People are working on-site and offshore these days. So we need to have an onboarding process which is standardized, so that people sitting out of different geographies won't be able to feel that they are not once being empowered because they're not in the home country of the company. So that's the first point on connecting geographies. And then you have the Gen Y and Gen Z workforce as well that we already talked about. And then experiencing the organization and business, like one of you mentioned about the BU head, right? So that goes a long way into doing that, experiencing the organization and the business itself. And then we come to a very inherent characteristic of somebody who's joined very new to the company, right? They would have apprehensions about joining about joining a new company, about what that culture might be. A lot of recent articles have actually complained against a major e-commerce giant as to their people culture, and then there was a lot of counter arguments as well. So when somebody is joining new to the company, when he or she sees these articles, there's a lot of apprehension goes in saying, okay, what if my manager treats me like one of these ex-employees? What if all of this is true because it came in a very established newspaper company in the US? So those kind of questions will start coming up as well. So an effective onboarding, solution should be able to address these challenges. I think that's what we're trying to drive here. And then the two other characteristics are the analytics and the cost, or the ROI, which is very pertinent to the HR world, right? Where you need to look at people during the pre-joining phase in order to understand. So a major technology giant that we spoke to recently said, we want to identify before they join whether they might actually join or not, right? But our question was, hey, you've already given them the offer. What are some of the reasons why they may not join? And he gave us close to 7 or 8 reasons as to why they don't feel like empowered, or they don't feel like joining that new company that they've been given an offer to, right? So those are some challenges that we need to address. And during the onboarding process itself, if you see lack of engagement during the onboarding process, you can identify that this person may not end up joining the company at all. And then obviously there's the cost of the BU head's time being spent, maybe having to fly the BU head to a different location in order to conduct the induction process itself. So those are some questions that do come up during the onboarding process, right? So let's move on. So we've been talking about challenges for quite a while. Let's look at three things that we can do in order to address them, right? So yes, there needs to be a little bit of learning in the process. There also needs to be a little bit of fun, and we spoke about analytics as well, right? So what is this gamified onboarding? Before I even go there, let me put the question to you all. What do you think is gamified onboarding? I'd love to see some responses in the chat window. What do you think, in your views, in a few words, in as few words as possible, what do you think is gamified onboarding? People are included in an informal and a fun way. Okay, that's a nice way to put it, Akanksha. Some of you might be thinking, that's exactly why I joined this webinar, to know what it is. Okay, so that's okay then. Fun way of inducting people. Okay, Deepika, thank you for that. Process and procedures to be explained using online games. Okay there, Kavita. Saurabh again tells us structured information, which is intuitive, full of fun and information. Okay. Vishwa, so it's more about engagement. I think that's what Vishwa and Srini have mentioned as well. It's more about engagement, more about being accessible, mobile and social as well. Great. I see some good responses. And that's what I wanted to actually break out as well, right? So I don't want this notion that, okay, we give them a game, they will play the game and the engagement level will be high, right? The key is not just the game, right? Now, if you take a few of the very popular games, like maybe Angry Birds or a flight-based game or Farmville, right? Now, why do these games succeed, right? If you actually look at some of the elements in that, you'll notice that it's not just the game elements, right? Do you actually go down to the physics of the Angry Birds? Do you actually measure which angle the bird will actually fly and hit the pig? You don't actually do all of that. You kind of go into the mechanics at a very later stage. What you find interesting is, first, it's very simple. It's very simple to understand, right? Anybody can actually pick up a mobile phone with Angry Birds and be able to exactly telling a story, making it engaging, making it stick, right? So even if I'm offering points today, that is not effective gamification. That is just an extrinsic reward that you get. Now, when you beat a pig, you're just getting some points and you're getting a star for hitting it the first time, right? That's it. That's what Angry Birds is all about. But there is a more inherent element to it. One is it's very accessible. It's given for free. You can obviously buy virtual currency in order to give them more revenue and all of that. But the other point is, let's look at something like the other games that I mentioned, right? So you have an Angry Birds. You also have Farmville. The reason why Farmville went viral and became famous is because of the social element, right? The minute I'm able to donate fertilizer to somebody else, right? How do you even learn about farming through this, right? It's all because of the social element there. You have people who are gaining ahead of you. You have people who've got more points, who've got more crops ahead of you, and that's why you want to go and beat them as well. There are a lot of other game examples that I can bring in to bring in the social element. So in onboarding necessarily, games alone will not help you achieve that level, right? You may have a game which has, okay, guess the org chart, right, of the company. Let's say you have a very famous company, let's say Apple, right? Now, if you put the CEO and you put the other BU heads below the CEO, people are likely to guess who the CEO is, right? Tim Cook, great. But then what do you get out of that? That is not necessarily the game itself, right? What is the game element there is, can I guess that name the fastest? Can I guess the other names quicker than my other peer who's doing it as well, right? That is key to engaging the audience during the onboarding process, right? And then obviously there are the other elements where the BU heads of the company spend time, show them empowerment and all of that. But the first attractive or the engaging thing for the next gen workforce would be three elements. One is mobile, one is social. To create the engagement, you also need a game-like interface or a game elements, right? So let's cut down Angry Birds, right? When you actually look at what Angry Birds is all about, it's nothing but the points that you get, the game itself, where you throw the bird and then it goes catapults and then goes and hits the pigs, and also Farmville, where you have the social element, right? If I were to just break it down, these are three elements that we're talking about here. So therefore, learning has to happen in the case of onboarding, but there needs to be a lot of fun as well. And the fun is not just through the games, but also through the social aspects, where people get rewards and people are measured competitively, So it goes back to our school days, right, where we used to compete with our other classmates, right? Hey, she scored 19.5. Hey, he scored 19. Hey, I only got 18.5, right? That competition is inherent in us. That is always going to be there in us, right? But that alone is not enough. The context is also very important, right? So they go hand in hand. Okay, so gamified onboarding, okay, is nothing but is a program that leverages social, analytics-driven, anytime, anywhere learning methodology to create experiential learning and a great new experience for new hires, right? So Abhinami mentioned here, she hit the nail on the wall, that new joiners should feel comfortable, making the new joiner feel accustomed to the culture. Okay, these are important things that are very crucial for a successful onboarding journey itself, right? Now, how do we address these challenges using gamification? Why gamification? Let's address that first, right? Now, we've done our own research, okay? On the right side, you see this, 33% improvement we have seen in our own induction programs, which had games versus the traditional methods of inducting people. And we've also seen 67% improvement in engagement levels. We double-check these numbers, right? They add up to 100, yes, but we double-check them independently, and we're seeing that this is what we have seen the difference between two groups that we selected and we did the research on, right? What is it about a game that makes it very interesting? It's the objective, it's the mission, it's the competition that I spoke to you about, and also if you want to spread it across geographies, it is also the accessibility as well, right? Those are very crucial elements that we can delve on, right? And then obviously Forbes has also done another study, and Gartner has done this other study as well, where they say that gamified applications, or 70% of the Forbes 2000 companies, will have at least one gamified application in 2014, and we are now in 2015 itself, right? Going to 2016. Okay, so that's that's the impact of gamification, right? Now let's take a breather here, because the next is going to be a big one. Okay, on addressing this challenge. Let's just pause here and see if you have any questions at this point in time, and let's try and address those questions as well at this point in time. There are some important things that we will touch on, like storytelling and other things. But before that, let me just pause and see if you have any questions at all for me right now. Okay, let me just quickly share the leaderboard once again. So one of you has asked this question, so I'll just come back to the question. So looking at the leaderboard, we're seeing that Akanksha and Saurabh are leading, Abhishek, Abhinami, and Konika are, even Natasha as well, tied for second position. And so we'll see how this goes on, right? So can you see the element of competition which may be there in some of us, may not be there in others? That's okay, but you see that happening, right? So let's address these, right? So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to give you one micro element of that entire gamification process itself, right? Now, some of you have asked me, okay, what is this gamification application all about? Because that's what we shared in the previous slide. It's nothing but trying to take an existing process, okay, and trying to add game elements to it. Now, what are these game elements, right? Now, when I talked about Angry Birds or popular game, you can think about any game that you have in mind, right? Now, you can think about even a sport, right? In cricket, okay, let's take cricket, right, because it's a popular example. Let's take cricket, right? Now, what is it that the teams are doing, right? If you actually look at it, they are basically just, there's a famous quote as well, right? Hitting, it's one person hitting a ball and 11 people chasing it, right? It's just that, right? At the core of it, that's it, right? What else is there? If you look at it, it's a lot. If you tell me, hey, how can you simplify cricket like that? You're impeding on a religion. Some of you might say, but that's it. At the end of the day, that's what it is, right? But then what you have on top of it is the point system. What is the point system? It's the runs that you get, right? You score a great shot, you hit a great shot, you get a 6. You hit a good shot, you get a 4. If you don't hit a good shot, you get 3-1, or you get out, right? What is all of this, right? You're assigning points how you hit the ball, and the farthest it reaches, you get points for that. Right? The points is nothing but the runs, and then you have a competition as well. You have in India versus Pakistan, the biggest rivals of the sport. If they go against each other, you get a lot of attention. You get a lot of interest. There's a lot of interest in a lot of us do it. What is that in us inherently? It's nothing but the competition, right? And you have the World Cup, right? So if in the world of gamification, some of you might have heard of this term called badge, right? What is this badge, right? If you say quizzing champion, or if you say speller bee champion, or if you say World Cup champion in cricket, it's nothing but what you've achieved over a period of time, right? That is what gamification is about, on hitting one ball and 11 people chasing it. In the same way, let's take our context here, right? If you look at the onboarding process, right, some of us do feel connected to PPTs, right? So there's nothing against them. It's a preference that some of us have, right? Now, the PPT decks and informal or the formal ways of induction has helped in the last decade to make the process more stringent. But there is a need to make this process even more interesting. Can we induce competition in this? Can we create a level of peer-to-peer networking and discussions while the onboarding process is on, right? So those are things that we need to be able to address. Okay, and so that's very crucial to the process itself, right? Gamification, therefore, to summarize, is to take an existing process and adding game elements to it. Okay. Now, what are these game elements? I've already given them to you. It's also the leaderboard. It's the points. Leaderboard is nothing but I earn 100 points. Somebody else earns 90. I lead. Therefore, that's called as a leaderboard, right? So that is the crux of the whole thing. I hope I've answered that question. Okay. And yes, like one of you also mentioned, there is a storytelling element to it as well. Okay. Okay, so Sneha has posted this question. Does gamified onboarding work across levels? Does it work even for senior leaders? Right? Now, that's a very valid question, right? Now, I mean, so senior leaders, by the way, let's get this one straight, right? Senior leaders do like games as well. It's not that, you become old and you suddenly stop liking games, right? I see my own dad who plays solitaire, right? So they do like games as well. It's just that they may not be attached to an Angry Birds or a Farmville kind of game, right? So they may not like those graphics. They may not like that. But inherently, if you take chess is of course a sport. I don't want to classify it as a game. But if you look at solitaire or other games like that, they do like that. They do connect with that, right? And even Carrom, for example, they do connect with that. Those are games that they do connect with on a daily basis, and they do play it on their phone as well. So we cannot discount that gamified onboarding or gamified solutions will not help the senior audience as well. But here's the thing. For them, the graphics, all of that needs to be toned down. The level of competition and context needs to be at a much higher level. Okay, so that is crucial. So we can have competition, right? It's not unhealthy to have it. There's nothing like an unhealthy competition to have, right? But the process should not involve too many games. It should not be that it is game heavy for them, right? It should be in a manner where it is more professional, more mature, in the sense that for people like senior leaders would be able to connect to it as well. And that touches on to a very interesting example that I came across. I don't know if you, I can't recollect the name, the CIO of Starbucks, right, who's now the CIO of, I think, Netflix. He's about 40 years old. He's a senior leader, okay? And the way that he actually ascended to that position was by playing World of Warcraft. I don't know if you're aware of this strategy-based game. He said he learned strategy through that particular game itself, right? So he's been playing that particular game for the last 5 years or 6 years, and he attained that position by being able to induce whatever learnings he got from strategy by playing that World of Warcraft game and being able to apply that in the workplace. So yes, gamified solutions will work across levels. It's just that it needs to be tailor-made for different people across the workforce, right? For lesser experienced folks, you would try and do more of games. You would try and have more of quizzes. You have the competition as well, and the competition and the context should increase as you go senior into the audience. This is all about catering to the demographics, but the solution works, and that's what we've seen as well. Okay. Neeti Singh makes a very good point here. She says, joiners want the onboarding process to be as crisp and small or short as possible, right? Especially in IT firms, right? So Okay, so let's address this, right? So Neeti is saying, how do we address boredom, right? How do we do that in the process of this entire thing, right? And that goes into the next slide. Now, let's take this example. I'm running out of time, so I'll just quickly address this. Let's take this example of a mobile telecom operator, okay? And let's see that we've got to make a gamified onboarding solution for this telecom operator, and this has to apply across all the levels except the senior level, okay? So I'm excluding them for the time being, okay? We'll address them later on as well to address your other previous questions, right? So we've got to make a solution which should introduce them to the company, okay? Let's say just for an example, let's say this company is Airtel, because then it's easy for me to give these examples. And so we had to come up with a possible solution for this, right? So how do we tailor make exactly the things that I mentioned, right? Geographies, across different geographies, it should be online, cost should be less, because it's been touted that a gamified onboarding, a traditional onboarding solution, including travel expenses and everything, could cost about 30% of an average new joinee annual salary, which is quite a huge amount, right, in the US especially, where the research originates from. So if we want to reduce these costs, right, so we've got to keep it online, we've got to keep it engaging, it needs to empower as well as tell a story, right? So this is I think what we are kind of telling as well, right? So it needs to be able to connect to the audience, right? So there needs to be some context there as well, okay? So what we did was we said, why don't we give them a game-like interface where they have to build a mobile tower in a place where there is no mobile connectivity at all. Okay, so the objective is very simple. You build a mobile tower. The town is called Tarkala, okay, and it's a fictitious town. Don't worry about where it is and all of that. It's a seashore-based town that's got about, let's say, about 150,000 odd people right now, and you've got to build a mobile tower, and they've not had mobile connectivity for a very long time, or very poor mobile connectivity, and Airtel is going to go there and change that. Okay, so that's the objective that the learners would get, right? Now, I mean, you might ask, hey, okay, so what? I mean, you have to build a mobile tower. How hard is that to do once you're in the industry itself? The challenge that they had was a lot of people don't know about the company itself, right? Before they can even join the company, they've been, they are fresh recruits from colleges. They don't know about the company itself. So they start at the very beginning, okay, and taking the journey, they need to be able to collect the raw materials that are required to actually build the tower itself, starting off with regulatory approvals, starting off with also the connectivity, the technology behind it, the electronics, everything. They need to be able to collect all of these and also partner with vendors in order to do this. So here's the process, right? This is a journey that starts off with landing there, okay, and then they've got to, and obviously Airtel, let's say, has got all of these decks, right? These decks on getting how to get regulatory approvals, on Airtel, on the induction process. So these decks, we don't really come in and change anything. All we're doing is gamifying the whole process, right? First is to create competition, right? Is to create leaderboards, is to create interesting quizzes, and introducing interesting games as well, okay? But beyond all of that is the story of connecting all of these people. I think recently you would have read in a lot of the Facebook and social media articles, Facebook, Microsoft, Google, all of them want to connect a lot of villages, right? So this example is something we put together a few months back. It looks like a lot of companies want to actually do this, right? So this person's context or story is connect to the entire village with mobile connectivity, right? So that's a journey that they will go through. Now, and throughout this journey, what they'll do is there would be reward mechanisms. Like I said, you will get badges, you will get points. The points is nothing but the money that you get in order to build it. So unless you achieve $1 million, you will not be able to build the tower itself. And how do you achieve these? How do you achieve the $1 million, right? So by posing discussions in the journey, by having discussions with other peers who are also going through the same journey as well, by going through these decks, because see, at the end of the day, these decks are important, right? And that's why they're being used consistently all over across, right? So those decks are important. Those PPTs are important, right? So after you've seen the PPT, can you attempt a small quiz? Can you quickly ask them to attempt a small quiz? Can you ask them that, okay, if you access the particular deck beforehand or quicker, you get higher rewards. You can build your tower quicker. And once you build your tower quicker, you're able to identify this individual at the induction ceremony, at the orientation ceremony, right? That is going to be the way that we should be tailoring the gamified process, because it shouldn't just be completely online as well, right? There can be an offline mode as well. Even if they are remote, there needs to be somebody there who comes in and rewards this individual who built the tower the quickest, right? And there's a surprise there as well, and I'll come to that surprise. Okay, so reward mechanisms, right? So it's you get these rewards in order to build the tower. So all of this has to go towards that one objective, building that one tower, right? So what it does is it gives a day in the life of this individual, right? Whether he's in the marketing team, whether he's in the technology team, whether he's in the sales team, they already know what is the ecosystem, what is the process that a lot of people have to follow, right? And that's it, right? So that's pretty much it. Now, in order to deliver this, you can take your PPTs, make them into videos, make them into engaging videos. Why not have a doodle artist on these videos? Why not just quickly create a character and introduce them to all of these, right? Why don't you have a small comic character and introduce them to the CEO, and the CEO has a message as well, right? These are things that companies have been doing and are already doing this, right? Especially in companies like Google and other people who are on the technology innovation curve, or higher on the technology innovation curve. There are recorded videos of CEOs. It's a recorded video. It's not a live video. It's a recorded video, right? So that's the third point that is mentioned here, socializing with the joining team, right? So the joining team needs to welcome this new joiner, okay, and be able to embrace them as on day one itself, right? And the fourth one is also on the analytics part, right? So the solution we have helps you to get those analytics as well. Who is very participative in building this tower? Who might finish building this tower the first, right? So we did a test. We did a test where we had the traditional kind of learning management kind of a portal, and then we had another one where it was all gamified. And a lot of people seem to spend a lot more time on this gamified learning portal. You know why? Because of the second point. It's not just the game aspect, but it was the challenge button that we placed in there. So you were able to see who else is joining the company, and they could be from different functions. Somebody could be in HR, somebody could be in marketing, sales, any other functions as well. But the challenge button, have you heard of this game called Quiz Up, right? Quiz Up is, it's nothing, what is it? It's nothing but a quiz, right? But what it does is it brings a lot of people together. It brings real-time people together, right? Mm-hmm. And when you're able to challenge somebody who is your friend, especially who is your friend, you're able to challenge that individual takes the quiz again and then be able to beat you or get beaten, right? So that created a lot of engagement, and people spent a lot more time on the gamified platform rather than the traditional platform, which just basically went through like a flow, right? It was just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, what's next, right? So that's what it is. Now, again, what is challenging is to connect all of this to the story that we have, right? And there you go. So Vishwa is saying it gives you good nicknames as you level up as well. And then, so how do you then? So the other question Shravya is mentioning is, how do you go about with the rehire onboarding in this module, right? I'm not sure if I get the question right, but I think what you're saying is, what about the same module? What about this for rehires or lateral hires? Is I think the assumption here. So. For lateral hires as well, the process can be very similar. It doesn't need to change a lot. The story can change, okay, but the individual elements may not have to change at all, right? So it depends on the company, it depends on the context, okay, but the individual elements are, they're all in place, right? I hope I've been able to communicate those individual elements on the features that you see on the slide here itself, right? Great. So let's look at some of these journeys that we did. This is a journey that we came up with for Redbus, right? So Redbus wanted to give them an idea of let's say, about us, growth, what is our strategy moving forward, what are the financials and so on. So we created a road, right? And we created a road, we took them on that journey itself. It's a journey, right? So they hop onto this Redbus bus, and we personalize a lot of things. On the right, you can see notifications, and you can also see friends as well, right? That is the crucial bit, right? You need to have this game-like interface. You need to have friends. You need to have the notifications. And you need to keep it as close to their hearts as possible. Most of us are on Facebook. Most of us are on social media, right? So how do you engage that expertise that people have? And yes, I'm calling it expertise, right? Because according to Malcolm Gladwell, a famous author, right, what he said was, if people spend 10,000 hours on an activity, they become an expert at it. Right? Sachin Tendulkar famously is said to have spent almost more than 10,000 hours before he joined one-day international cricket. Right? How do you gamify this, right? So if you were to gamify a sport, there's a very interesting excerpt in his book as well. The way he used to gamify his own batting practice is he used to place a 1 rupee coin on one of the stumps, right? If you identify with cricket, on the off stump, he used to place a 1 rupee coin, right? And whenever he used to play, in the nets, if a ball hit the stump, the 1 rupee coin would fall, and that would be his lunch money. Right? So he would, that's the context. The context is, if he saves that 1 rupee, he will be able to eat lunch, right? But if he doesn't, he'll have to probably skip lunch and continue practicing, right? So that's what. So is this a game? Is he playing a game? Actually, no, right? He's not actually playing a game. So when we say gamifying, it doesn't really mean, okay, give them a game and then forget about it. No, that's not what it is, right? It's creating that context. It's creating that competition, right? For Sachin, it was that, okay, I need that 1 rupee to be there as much as possible. And it says in the book as well that some of the first few days, he had to struggle to keep the 1 rupee coin on the stump. But as and when he started practicing more and more, he started, saving that 1 rupee coin, and he used to have a sumptuous lunch. Right? So that's crucial. That the context is crucial, right? It's not just that 1 rupee coin. Yeah, he could have asked his parents for it, or he could have asked the coach for it. They would have given him that 1 rupee coin. But the context of keeping that 1 rupee coin to improve his batting, improve his skill, or on top of what he already had, right? That was the crucial element that I thought was very interesting. I thought I'd bring it up, right? So in the case of Red Bus as well, what we do is we create that journey, right? We create the journey, we create that personalized look and feel, create the road, create these different elements. At the end of the day, they need to go through the same decks as well, but then can we have discussions? Can we have peer-to-peer discussions? Can we, in some companies, it's forbidden for new people to talk to each other, right, before they actually join the company. It is hard for them to change to this new generation, but I feel that is very important as well. It is my point of view, but I feel that that's very important for people to discuss about the company and be able to, alleviate their apprehensions as well. Okay. And there you go. Vishwa has actually just, he says 13 1 rupee coins as pride, right? So there you go, right? So that is the crucial bit, right? Okay. So let's look at other things, right? What about involving other processes of HR like PMS, L&D through gamification, right? Now, again, the key takeaway from this is you don't have one story for everybody, right? That's a tough part, right? You can't have just one story which applies across levels, across functions, right? Now, if you take the L&D team, okay, you might have some slide decks, some PPTs that you think would be important. Can you weave a story around it? Everyone loves storytelling, right? Can you weave a story around it? Okay. If not, okay, let's say that you're not able to weave a story around it. Can we create a quick interface like this? Right? Can we create a quick interface, have those decks as well, but create some, on top of that, can we create some material there where they are being empowered in order to have discussions before they join the company? I know that these days people are more interested to know about Bangalore. Let's say they're coming to Bangalore for their jobs. Let's say they're coming from the north. They don't know anything about Bangalore. They don't care about your onboarding module. They only care about Bangalore. It's okay, right? Let's give them that module, right? So one of the conglomerates that we're working with as well have said the exact same thing. They don't worry about the decks that we give them. They're more worried about the city itself. So our question was, why don't we just give them that deck on the city? Why can't we have an interactive map, okay, on the city and give them those locations where they'll be staying? It's a very simple, free to use way of telling them or introducing them about the city that they're going to be part of, right? Now, that's a common thing, right? So you can actually apply that across different levels. Now let's look at the individual thing, right? For example, in L&D, how do you gamify the L&D process in the entire onboarding process, right? So give them objectives that are more learning oriented, right? Maybe you've got to upskill a certain section of people in a particular company or in your organization itself, and you give them certain challenges. Why is it that they are not being able to, what are we doing here? We're taking a case study approach, right? The storytelling approach, and we're adding a layer of technology to it and a flavor of competition to this, right? And that will work across different levels, right? That's what we're trying to say as well. The same story will not, but one story and having different people, peer-to-peer discussions, and being able to connect with each other would help even across different functions as well, whether it's L&D, so you set different objectives, you set different goals. That is crucial. Without a goal, and that's what most induction programs, right, they fail because they don't have a goal. What is the objective of me coming to this induction day program, and somebody just goes on and on talking about the company and so on. Give them an objective. Give them an objective. Towards the end of the day, they've got to do something. There's an activity that is involved. Even if, let's say, you don't believe anything about this deck, whatever I'm talking about, just try this out at one of your offline onboarding programs, right? Traditional onboarding programs. Give them all an objective at the end of the day and see how effective it becomes, right? In terms of the competition as well as the objective as well. Okay, so that's extremely important as well. So that's why I just thought I'll go a little off track, but it was important to address one of the questions that had come up from Atul. Okay, and then I talked about the leaderboard, right? So this is extremely crucial. This was a leaderboard which we did inherently inside the company itself, and John here leads with 385 points. He's a clear winner here as well, right? And then of course this is from Gaurav's account that we took up as well. And if you look at this leaderboard that we're saying. Again, the leaderboard also needs to be a little bit more tailor-made, right? Let's say there are 500 people that are getting onboarded into this process, and you are 499, right? And okay, let me step back here. I'm sure most of you are on LinkedIn, right? How many of you actually click on who viewed my profile the minute you log in? How many of you actually do that? You can put your hands up if you want to indicate that you've done that. Okay, a lot of hands going up. Okay, yeah, you see that, right? So what is it? Why do you do that? Why do we go to LinkedIn and we want to see who all viewed my profile? Why do you do that? Because there is a leaderboard, right? There is a leaderboard to see how many people in my company. Let's say I'm in Cognizant. Let's say I work in this particular division. In my company, how many people are on the leaderboard and where am I? What position am I in? Okay, you do that, right? But then you don't blatantly go and post something in order to increase your leaderboard position. You don't do that. What you do is maybe you write meaningful posts, and that's what LinkedIn is trying to do. It's trying to create a lot of content through gamification. And what is this gamification? Is to basically tell you who all have viewed your profile. And it's very important that they don't necessarily say if you're in 499, they won't show the first 10. They will show plus 10, minus 10, which means they'll show from 490th till the end. They will not show the first few. Right? And that's another crucial thing. That's contextual gamification, right? Where I only see my immediate peers, or I might only see my friends who I have spoken with most. I won't see everyone. That's crucial as well. You just don't put up a points leaderboard like I did and then just give out reward points randomly. That's not how you do it, right? You have to have some context. If somebody is at the bottom of the leaderboard, you ensure that they are also empowered by giving them what are the next 10 positions that I can beat in order to go up the ladder itself. So that's an important point about having a leaderboard, right? Okay, we're running more and more of time. Notifications, yes, it's important as well. Okay, because we're doing a lot of things, right? Even when the new joinees are serving their notice periods, they are doing a lot of things. They're closing up. They're doing knowledge transfers in their old companies, a lot of things. So a unified notification system is important, but it also needs to be smart, right? You can't just dump in. How Facebook has made its timeline very, very smart, right? So that's crucial for the social aspect. If you dump in all the data there, that's going to be a problem, right? And again, this applies across functions. You don't have to distinguish that, okay, this will only work for the technology folks because they are on Facebook more often. No, it works across different functions, and you just have to give them an easy-to-use interface. That's crucial, right? It shouldn't be complicated to learn, right? Otherwise, you will see that people take time to learn and other things, and then they exit or drop out, right? That's what we've seen in our programs as well. Okay, so content types, what all can we do? We can have games, we can have simulations, we can have animated videos, we can have doodles, right? So those are things that we can do. Pretty obvious from whatever we have discussed, so I won't spend a lot of time here. And there you go, right? You can even do hiring and assessments online. You can do a career development platform completely online as well these days. But I won't be touching on all of those, right? That's for a different conversation. This is mainly to see how people come on board and then see how they are engaged as well, right? And again, a lot of people talk about personalized onboarding programs. For example, I may be good at I may be good at, let's say, analytical thinking, but I may not be a great communicator, right? So I need to learn more about communication than learning more about analytical thinking, and that's crucial. You need to identify that as well through the analytics that I spoke about, and be able to tailor-make a program just so that this person learns oral communication or English communication rather than analytical thinking, right? Because if you bombard them with the same program, that's again going to fail as well. So you need to be able to contextualize as much as possible and see which ones apply to which candidates. It's extremely hard to do, even with the modern technologies that we have. It's extremely hard to cater to different needs. Okay, but we need to head there at some point. Otherwise, people will get bored with all the content that they have to fill up before they do it. Somebody mentioned if there are 53 slides in a deck, how do you make it interesting, right? And that's the crux of it. See how you can. Let me give an example of attention span. Attention span over the last 10 years is reduced by 33%, which means for an activity, if you took 12 seconds to do it, people are now able to do it in 8 seconds, and they want to do the next thing, right? That's how much attention span has reduced over 1 decade, right? So with that in mind, you cannot have 53 slide decks. Great. If you have 53, it's okay, no problem. But see how you can make it more visual. Can you picturize it? Can you give them a story behind it, right? That's crucial for the success of any onboarding program itself. Okay. Quick summary. I was just going through that, right? Documentation, government levies, and so on and so forth. Now, what happens at the very end, right? I'm going to end with this slide. So what we did was, yes, you're building a mobile tower, right? There's got to be a connection at the end, okay? There's got to be a connection where we say that you've got so many rewards, you've built the tower, okay? What happens at the end of it, right? So we thought of this way where we said, on the onboarding program, we have your mobile numbers, right? So we send them an SMS as if to say that the platform or the tower that you just built is the one which is sending out the SMS. And it says, welcome to Airtel. This is your first day. Let's begin, right? So once that SMS comes in, there is this offline element as well, which plays out, and it becomes a lot more powerful than a simple journey that goes through as well. So towards the end, people are motivated. They are more excited to end the entire journey on a high because they've got an SMS saying welcome, and that SMS came from the tower that they built, right? So that journey, then there's a closure to it, there's a completion to it, and that comes to the end of my slides as well. I hope you found it interesting, and would love to hear some questions that you have towards the end of all of this.
Thank you so much, Mahesh. Thank you, Raksha.
Okay, so yeah, go ahead, Ritu.
Covered many questions, but let me keep it written on a question.
Okay.
First question is how to engage and interact with employees in speaking countries like China.
Okay, so sorry, was the question how do you engage employees when they are in different countries like China, for example, right? Okay, so just recently been there, right, in Guangzhou and then Shanghai as well. What I realized is not a lot of people are trained in English, right? So the first ever thing that you do in your onboarding process is to ensure that they are engaged with their local language, right? That's the very first thing we've got to do, right? Convert all your modules, all whatever you want to deliver, convert all of that into Mandarin or Cantonese, right? So whichever language applies to the locality that you're talking about. Otherwise, right, so everything else, right, for example, the story that I told you about building a mobile tower or whether games are engaging, they play a lot of games, right? In China, they play a lot of games, they play different types of games, and you also need to understand their user base as well. They are very used to WeChat, right? Their version of WhatsApp and Viber, they're very, very used to that as well. And they're also used to voice recording as well. So you need to collect these inputs, right? So when I was there, when I was, just monitoring or observing them in a train, I could see that they were actually on WeChat more than anybody or any other country that I've been to, right? So you need to be able to see how you can, and I think their attention spans are even lower than maybe India, right? Because of a lot of things that are happening there in terms of innovation, in terms of culture, and so on and so forth. So you need to be able to make things quick. You need to be able to make things in Chinese, Mandarin, or Cantonese. And you need to also see how you can tap into these applications like WeChat, which also allow for enterprise communication as well, right? I know it's a big step for some companies, and it may not be doable or feasible. But what I'm saying is, can you make things on the mobile? Can you make the onboarding process or the entire journey completely on the mobile? Can you have discussions on the mobile? So we've launched this mobile app as well, and we did this test, right? So people respond to daily discussions, but it needs to be very, very short, right? It can't be that, okay, go and do a market research for your company and come back to us with inputs. No, you can't do that, right? But if you tell them your competitor is above you in this particular area, okay, what is the one thing you would do differently in order to ensure your company or your company can outplay your competitor? Simple question like that, right? That itself, they get engaged and they're able to respond to it. They respond to it in Chinese, right? So you need to have people on the ground who know the language in order to have an effective onboarding program. That's crucial. So they know about the company already, right? It's more about these questions that will keep them engaged rather than asking them very generic or framework-based questions. So you've got to be able to be agile in your process in order to see what all questions we can ask them. And bite-sized learning is kind of the future. You've got to be very, very short, very sharp, and being able to ask the right questions which might engage them. I mean, I'm seeing a lot of activity on that front where we've asked these questions without giving them too many PPT decks. We've only given them 2 decks, 20 slides each, and that's it. After that, it's all about the discussions.
Thanks, Mahesh. That's really helpful. I hope Pooja got her answer. Now, let's move on to the next question, which is from Vishwa. How do you find the balance between addiction to the game and transferring the knowledge you want to?
So, Vishwa, that's a very tough question. But let me tell you this, right? If you're addicted to the game that let's say you've given out, it's always good. It's okay, right? Because I'm saying that because people find it really hard to design games that are engaging, right? So it's actually a great thing that if you have a game which is addictive, and the knowledge will always come in a little later. That is okay, right? But I'm not saying, okay, prioritize design of the game rather than giving them the knowledge. Somewhere in the back of their minds, they've got to keep the objective in mind, right? So let's say that they are addicted to the game, but can you have an objective, or can you have a milestone that they have to hit by applying what they learned in the game to their company itself? Can you? I mean, it's a very motherhood statement, right? Can you apply it, right? But can you actually give them a quick objective to say, okay, you did this to this person in the game. Let me give you an example. We have a game on influencing, right? Now, in the influencing game, you have certain tactics that you have to use in order to convince certain people, right? So one of the discussion questions we asked was, okay, for Victor, you used face-to-face meeting in order to convince him, but you have a manager who is introvert in nature. Would you do face-to-face meeting, or do you send an email first and then go to them, right? It's an obvious question, but yes, I mean, that kind of takes them away from the game and then sees how you can apply it to your actual manager itself, right? And the delight is, if you can name that manager for every individual going through that process, nothing like it. I know it's very hard, but nothing like it. If you can say that, okay, this is Mahesh here, and this is he's an introvert, how do you connect to him? The minute that question comes up, he starts thinking, in the game, for somebody who was an extrovert, I applied this, but for me, for an introvert, maybe I should do something else. And that is how you connect it back into their real world itself, right? Because without a connection, the game is just a game. They play it, they forget about it, and that's it. It's done. So that connection is important.
Thanks, Mahesh. I know we are running out of time, but for the last question, we have a very simple but very interesting one. As you are area expert on this, why does gamification have such a positive impact?
Sorry, Ritu, I couldn't hear your question clearly.
The question is from Nishant, and it's, why does gamification have positive impact?
why does gamification deliver a positive impact? Is that the question?
Yeah. Such a positive impact, yes.
Okay. So, I mean, like I mentioned, right, there are a couple of, solid reasons why, because one of the things is we're so used to competing with each other, right? We are social animals at the end of the day, right? So we do like the impact that we have when we see other peers also learning something, right? For example, I mean, why do social networks have this thing called trending, right? Why do they have that? It is just so that you can discover new things that come up as well. So how can we apply this to our onboarding process, right? Now, let's go to a very simple example. In a company here in Bangalore, they have a very interesting, it's not a game lounge, it's a lounge where they have a lot of activities and an experience center and all of that, right? Now that got talked about a lot during the onboarding process, and that created a lot of engagement, created a lot of interest. But that interest soon, would have died if it was given by, let's say, a facilitator, right? If, let's say, Raksha or I were to go and say, hey, there's an interesting engagement or experience center at this block in this particular address or whatever, they may not have even listened to us. But if one of them actually visited the block and then said, hey, this is great, and he puts out a discussion on the board and says, hey, this is a fantastic place to hang out after our program today, right? The minute that comes out, it's coming from one of their peers. They see it as more credible, and they go out and see what the place is. What is that? It's nothing but competition. It's one of the game elements, and it creates that impact, right? So, I mean, so that's what you're saying here. It won't work. The term gamification has been beaten to death, right? I mean, what is it all about, right? To me, these are 3 or 4 elements that are crucial to this, right? So that peer-to-peer discussions, the social impact of it, and also the competition that comes in with it itself. So that is crucial in order to creating that impact.
Thanks, Mahesh. We have a lot of questions, but I think we will share with you offline, and you can answer them to the participants directly. So with this question and answer session, we are going to wrap up today's webinar. Once again, we thank webinar partner, KNOLSKAPE. Our very special thanks to Mahesh and Raksha for their time and invaluable shared with us today. I would like to thank everybody.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
Just want to announce that Vishwa was the final winner, so asking questions and also being interactive. Akanksha comes a close second with 50 points, and then Neeti with 40 points as well comes third as well. So congratulations to Vishwa.
That's great. Congratulations, Vishwa and Akanksha. So I was just thanking everybody on the webinar participants for joining us today. We'll come back to you with many more. That concludes today's webcast. Thank you and have a good day ahead.